This edition of Trains Around Kansas City is another visit to a bunch of rail yards around the area. Here we see 7327, an ES44 DC, and 2-9s hanging on to a cut of cars. There's also a cut of auto racks being moved to where they be loaded and unloaded. Here's a satellite view of the auto rack terminal so you get a better understanding. Maybe someday that terminal will move south of K32 into the rest of Argentine Yard. I also noticed some steel coils being transported in normal gondolas instead of special coil carrying flat cars. At the area where yard power is usually parked is a BN Green SD40-2 and number 1351, an SD32 Eco rebuilt from an ex-Santa Fe SD45-2. This smaller version of an airplane parts container is the first example of such I've seen. I did not expect to see this Kyle 9362, a former Southern Pacific SD45T-2, still in its original livery and number. This 1975 built tunnel motor was sold to CEFX in 2002 and acquired by the Kyle Railroad in 2014. In late 2019, it was transferred to the Missouri and North Arkansas Railroad. Sometimes Missouri and North Arkansas power migrates up to Kansas City, but I haven't seen any of their power until now. MNA tracks only go as far north as Pleasant Hill, Missouri. Also in the same lash-up were these Canadian Pacific SD60s, probably ex-Sioux Line units. Also in the yard were BNSF safety training cars. These Hazmat training cars travel throughout the BNSF system. There are also 4 warbonnets and an ex-Santa Fe caboose in this picture. As of recording this video, that caboose is still in the same siding or part of the yard. As I was heading down to the locomotive maintenance and inspection terminal, I passed this old Kenworth pulling an old camping trailer. Number 2018 is an ex-Penn Central GP40 that later went to the Rio Grande and was one of the first BNSF Jeeps to be painted in the H3 colors. Number 7149, an ES44C4, is looking quite clean. It was built in 2013. I did not intend that to rhyme, lol. There are also 2 more BNSF warbonnet-9s, both that were built around 1997. This Cargill unit is TWYX6499, an ex-Chicago Northwestern GP7 that was originally built in 1952. Cargill last used this unit in Fremont, Nebraska. At UP's Armourdale Yard, there were these 2 units hooked up to a mixed freight. They weren't moving, they were just parked there. But these 2 SD40Ns, number 1623 and 1627, were moving. They even had some freight cars behind them. As we approached Kansas City Southern's Notch Yard, I noticed some new reefer cars that were plain white. Apparently, these JR Simplot 7000 and 7100 series reefers were built in 2020. And I managed to catch another pair of Union Pacific SD40Ns heading to the Kansas City Southern Yard. There's always quite a few Kansas City Southern locomotives sitting in this siding, including SD70 Max, SD70 Aces, AC44 CWs, and some Gevos. And even one in Kansas City Southern de Mexico Gray. I found this cut of cars right here to be quite interesting, considering they haven't moved in between my visits to this yard. There's quite a lot of old Pullman Standard covered hopper cars in this cut. At UP's Neff Yard, the same big amount of power is still in storage. They are all early wide cabs, dating from the late 80s to the early 2000s. Now back to Mid-America Car, Inc., which is right next to the Kansas City Southern Yard, where there wasn't too much going on, but there was this Gevo in primer, which I believe was going to be a BNSF 25th anniversary unit. Engine 2348 is a slugged GP40 originally built for the Seaboard Coastline. Number 1728 is an ex-Burlington Northern SD40-2 and has worked in Kansas City for 10 years. I also noticed this covered hopper car with a logo I haven't seen before. Then went to Norfolk Southern's Avondale Yard where I saw a pair of high hood Jeeps sitting there. They were most likely ex-Southern units. Those boxcars behind them were actually being moved by an SD40-2. I don't usually go to BNSF's Murray Yard too often because it's not as big as operation compared to Argentine Yard. I did manage to see this former ATSF warbonnet clad B40-8W, one of my favorite classes of locomotive. And there was also a Union Pacific AC-44CW and SD-70 Mac parked next to the DPU of a coal train, as well as a pair of Kansas City Southern units. One is a KCS de Mexico unit. Now this shot is pretty awesome right here. I even managed to get an SD60M in shot. But I did get a shot of without the SD60M. It still looks cool too. I find it neat that nearly every container in this photo is a JB Hunt container. And that does it for this edition of Trains Around Kansas City.